The tools needed to assemble the deluxe rabbit fence include a hammer that's approximately 6 pounds, a level, 2 thin ropes that will assist you in lining up the poles. The length of these ropes should be approximately 1 foot longer than the desired fence length. 2 stakes that will help you set up these guiding ropes, as is displayed here. Safety glasses, gloves, a measuring tape, and wire cutters will all be needed to get you started. When unpacking a deluxe rabbit fence kit, you should have the amount of panels you have ordered, all pre-assembled with netting. There are 2 different size panels available. The first is the large panel with dimensions of 2 feet by 4 feet. Second is the small panel with dimensions of 2 feet by 2 feet. You will also receive an assortment of metal poles. Displayed here first is the 26-inch pole, and you will receive 2 per panel. Next is the 13.5-inch pole, and you will also receive 2 per panel. Lastly, you will receive a 40-inch pole and 2 13.5-inch poles for the swing gate. Lastly, the kit includes a collection of ties. The longer ties are for assembly purposes, and you will receive 2 per panel. These will be used to attach the panels to one another. The short ties are used to attach the netting to the copper tubing and will only be needed if the netting comes loose due to wear and tear. So just to review, in your deluxe rabbit fence kit, you should have the amount of panels you have ordered, an assortment of metal poles, and an assortment of ties. Step 1 involves aligning the 2 stakes on the outside of either end of the desired fence line. This step has already been completed here. But to describe, take 1 string and evenly line it up as the baseline between the 2 end stakes. Then run the second string along the middle between the 2 stakes. You now will have 2 guiding lines, one on the ground and one in the middle, to help you evenly position the poles as you assemble the fence. Step 2. Take a 26-inch pole and place it at the desired endpoint of the fence on the inside of the guiding posts. Vertically align the pole with the guiding strings to ensure that the pole is aligned back and forth. Then use the level to make sure the pole is aligned side to side. Proceed to hammer the pole into the ground using gentle blows to avoid mushrooming the top. Hammer the pole until approximately 12 inches of the metal is still exposed. If you are unable to get the pole at least 6 inches into the ground, with 20 inches exposed, due to an obstruction, use a short pole instead. Pull out the first pole by hitting it side to side and loosening it from the ground, and then drive in the short pole as deep as it will go. At most, you should have 6 inches of the metal exposed above ground. Lay out a tape measure along the baseline and lock into place at least 50 inches out. Make sure to measure from the outside of the pole. You can use your hammer as an anchor to make sure that the tape measure stays in place. Position the next pole where the outside of the second pole lines up with the 49 and 9/16 inch mark. This sizing should be used when placing in a large panel. When putting in a small panel, measure the outside of the second pole at the 25 and 3/8 inch mark. Follow the same steps as before to align the pole both back and front as well as side to side. Step 4. Take the tape measure and measure from the outside of the second pole to the outside of the third pole to a measurement of 1 3/8 inch. It is important to put the third pole in before placing the first panel down in order to avoid hitting the panel when inserting the third pole so close to the second. So again, make sure to put in the first 3 poles, as displayed here, prior to putting the first panel down atop the first 2 poles. Step 5. Time to place the first panel atop the first 2 poles. First, step back to ensure that the poles are aligned both back and front as well as side to side. If the pole is not straight, the panel will not slip into place properly. Once alignment is finalized, slide the panel atop the poles evenly. Place hands underneath and pull down slowly, making sure that the right and left sides are even. If not, you need to adjust. When the panel is 2 inches from the ground, switch your grip from underneath to pushing gently on top of the panel. As displayed here, your first panel is put into place. Step 6. Repeat the above steps until you have completed the entire perimeter of the garden area. Maintain the same measurements for both the large and small panels when changing directions around the perimeter. Step 7 involves the creation of the walk-in gate. First, determine the location of the gate. The gate can be placed anywhere along the perimeter of the garden area. The gate is made up of the long 40-inch pole that is used as the pivot point for the gate to open, along with a short pole that is placed on the opposite end as a small catch for the gate to rest on when in the closed position. And lastly, another small catch to lock the gate in to the open position. First, the pivot point should be determined by taking into account the slope of the land, if any, and also whether you want the gate to open from the left or right. The pivot point should be hammered into the desired spot with 24 inches of the metal exposed. The short pole should be hammered on the opposite end of the gate with an exposure of just 1 inch, just enough for the gate to rest on when closed. Lastly, hammer a second short pole parallel to the pivot point pole on the outside of the fence to secure the gate when in the open position. The measurement from outside to outside of the pivot point pole and the closed catch pole is the same as all other panels. Step 8. If the last panel fits in perfectly, you are very lucky. But as this is most likely not the case, overlapping of the panels is possible and should be done when enclosing the garden area. As you can see here, 2 of the panels are overlapping one another and are then tied together using one of the large zip ties that we use for assembly. Step 9. Use the large zip ties to attach the panels to one another. Attach the 2 ties 2 inches from both the top and bottom of the panels. When attaching the panels, do not tie them together too tight. It is important to thread the tie through the netting that is closest to the tube in order to prevent ripping of the netting material. Step 10. Use wire cutters to cut off the excess ties. You are now ready to sit back and enjoy your new pre-assembled rabbit garden fence.